The corporal works of mercy are ways in which Christians, particularly Catholics, tend to the bodily needs of our brothers and sisters in Christ, whereas the spiritual works of mercy tend to the needs of a person's soul. I've actually already given those a video of their own, but today we're going to learn all about the corporal works of mercy. Before we get started, I want to welcome and introduce myself to anyone who's never seen my content before. I'm Laura Youngblood, and my channel, A World of Spirituality, is dedicated to content on the diverse schools of thought regarding religion and spirituality. If you like this video, make sure to check some more of that out. Feed the hungry. In Matthew 25:35, Jesus says, "For I was hungry and you gave me food." And in verse 32 says, "Whatever you did for the least of these, you did for me, in addition to others in need I'll mention in this video." In the case of the hungry, how we treat those who have no or limited access to food is how we treat Jesus. You can't really talk about this work of mercy without referencing the story of how Jesus and his disciples multiplied 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish to feed a crowd of 5,000 very hungry people. We may not have the power to make enough food for that big of a crowd appear before our very eyes, but there are still lots of ways we can feed the hungry. The most obvious examples of this include volunteering at or donating to a soup kitchen or food pantry, agencies whose purpose is to provide meals and groceries for those who struggle to afford them. To hear more about the need for these facilities and how they help, as well as some of the side effects they have, check out a video I've posted on another channel of mine, The Advocate Who's Autistic. I've linked the video in your description, but don't click until you're done watching this one. Did I mention I have 2 other YouTube channels, and that one of them's called The Advocate Who's Autistic? This channel's all about history, sociology, and social justice issues. So if you like my content style and that stuff interests you, click the subscribe button and bell icon on that page, and of course on this page. Now for some other ways you can feed the hungry. When you cook meals for your family, give bakery treats to the mailman or other civil servants who come and deliver stuff, or help someone haul their groceries, that could also be seen as feeding the hungry. After all, Isaiah 58:10 says, "If you lavish your food on the hungry and satisfy the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom shall become like midday." Give drink to the thirsty. Generally speaking, this work of mercy goes hand in hand with feeding the hungry, because food and drink are both things we put in our mouths that sustain life, and the meals provided by homeless shelters and soup kitchens usually come with a drink. But think of giving drink to the thirsty as taking feeding the hungry one step farther. Science has proven that the human body actually needs drink more than food, that the absence of water can kill faster than the absence of food. So if someone has their fill to eat but isn't properly hydrated, their bodily needs still aren't met. If someone says, "I'm thirsty," they're already dehydrated. Having water to drink isn't any good if said water's contaminated in any way. Unfortunately, that's not hypothetical. Just as one example, from 2014 to 2019, the drinking water in Flint, Michigan was tainted with lead to a crisis extent. People in third world countries often go without running water, forcing them to subsist on potentially poisonous water. One way to specifically give drink to the thirsty and not just feed the hungry is to advocate for and vote in favor of policies and initiatives to make drinking water cleaner and safer. Until those policies go into place, we can all do our part by not using more water than necessary and being careful not to put any contaminants down the drains of our sinks and showers. When a very thirsty Samaritan woman met Jesus at the well, he satisfied both her literal and her spiritual thirst by giving her the living water to drink. We too can quench people's physical and spiritual thirst in our own ways, as we are called to do. Next up, Clothe the Naked. People these days aren't as likely to literally be naked in public as they were in Jesus' day. But there are people who go without adequate clothing and are forced to subsist on an inadequate makeshift. For example, wearing dirty or torn clothes or wearing clothes that don't fit, which is highly uncomfortable and in extreme cases dangerous. Good examples of clothing the naked in a modern sense include donating to a clothing drive or organizing one of your own, letting a friend or family member in need borrow your clothes, or better yet, give the clothes to them to keep if you don't need or want them anymore. The recent initiative to put washers and dryers in public schools so students who don't have regular access to them at home can do their laundry at school is also an example of clothing the naked. Because we humans don't just need clothes, we need clean, hygienic clothes to wear. Some say that an extension of clothing the naked is providing them with personal hygiene items, which those in poverty often lack access to. You can do this by holding or donating to drives of products such as toiletries, deodorant, toilet paper, diapers, wipes, and as isn't talked about nearly enough, menstrual products. This work of mercy is commanded in Matthew chapter 25, when Jesus explains that when we clothe the naked, we do something generous for God Himself. Shelter the homeless or harbor the harborless. The crisis of homelessness has existed ever since the beginning of time. When we think of homelessness, a particular image comes to mind depending on the time and place in which you live. But homelessness has many faces and manifests itself in many different ways. But generally speaking, homelessness is essentially the phenomenon of being without a permanent, adequate place to stay for the night. I don't know why anyone would think that homelessness is a choice. I can't think of one good reason why anyone would purposely live without the basic need of shelter, especially in a culture that has deemed this reality so embarrassing and shameful. Homelessness is caused by not having a home. Not having a home can be caused by many different things. Getting laid off, the death of a breadwinner, rent being driven up to an unaffordable level by gentrification, being an LGBTQ youth and being kicked out of the house by your bigoted parents, having medical bills that cripple you financially. One of the most notable examples of the work of mercy of sheltering the homeless is subsidized housing and privately owned homeless shelters. You can contribute to the greater effort of this work of mercy by either starting a shelter, volunteering at, or donating to one. If you know a friend or family member who's just been evicted from their apartment or parents' house, and you have some room in your house or apartment, let them stay with you until they get back on their feet. If someone needs maintenance done on their home that they can't afford, like roofing, flooring, siding, drywall, foundation repairs, accessibility modifications, etc., you could give them the materials or even do the work for them for free. One way I do this every summer is through the Appalachia Service Project, which I've made an explanatory video about and posted vlogs of my experiences these past 2 years on my original channel, which is now my advocacy channel. The people we serve through endeavors like this aren't homeless in the sense I mentioned earlier, but they are lacking in the need of shelter, and by helping with this, we're addressing their need. Visit the sick. For this work of mercy, the words visit and take care of can technically be used interchangeably. When you're sick, you're stuck either at home or in the hospital, so it's really nice to have friends and family visit you. If a friend or family member has a cold or the flu, come to their house if you don't already live with them. Bring them some soup and some medicine. But if they're contagious, be careful to do this in a way that ensures you won't catch it. If the illness is severe and they're in the hospital, find time in your schedule to visit your friend in their hospital room. Chat it up with them, tell some jokes or funny stories to cheer them up. Maybe even bring some flowers, balloons, or treats. But of course, don't attempt to perform any medical procedures on anyone you're not certified to do so. That's actually a felony. Beyond your circle of family and friends, you can also visit complete strangers who are sick, albeit indirectly, by volunteering at hospitals, doing tasks you are qualified to do, making blankets for and praying on them for Project Linus, and volunteering and donating to organizations such as the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which bring joy to children who are terminally ill. The sixth corporal work of mercy, visit the imprisoned or ransom the captive. The first of the two things this work of mercy means, visit the imprisoned, is pretty self-explanatory. The most direct way to do it is to travel to a local jail to visit and converse with inmates in their cells. Yes, they're in there for a reason. Yes, they made bad choices and did things they weren't supposed to do. But this work of mercy is tied to the spiritual one of forgiveness, of cutting a break to people who are already being punished enough. That's not even to mention all the people who are in jail because someone lied about them. A less direct way to visit the imprisoned is to donate or volunteer with the prison ministry. You can either give them money or treats and presents for them to give to the inmates. This work of mercy also consists of helping those who are imprisoned or captive in a more figurative sense. What's most pleasing to God is when you ransom these people or set them free. By virtue of having been ransomed from our sins through Christ's passion and death on the cross, we are called to ransom those bound in an unjust situation of any kind. The best way to do this is to report any situations of domestic violence or child abuse you know about, so that these women and children can be ransomed from those unsafe homes. Donating to, volunteering with, or even starting your own human trafficking rescue group is another great way to ransom the captive. If you have a coworker who's been working nonstop and desperately needs a break, offer to cover a shift for them. If someone asks for your help when they're stuck in a bind, say yes if you're able. Bury the dead. Once someone's body expires and they're dead, there's one last thing they need: to have their body buried or cremated. This is the only work of mercy I'm covering that applies specifically to Catholics, as verses directly extolling it can only be found in the book of Tobit, which is not included in Protestant Bibles. You don't have to be a funeral director or gravedigger to bury the dead, though becoming one is a great way to do it. When you attend a funeral, or even just a memorial service or vigil for someone who's recently died, you're helping say the final goodbyes to that person and contributing to their burial and preservation of their memory. Comforting the family of the deceased in their grief is also a good way to help bury the dead, and is a double work of mercy since it's also comforting the afflicted. After the deceased has been buried, the belongings they left behind also have to be sorted through and distributed among those who survived them. Doing that is also a way to help, so to speak, bury the dead. While tending to someone's end-of-life matters through the work of mercy of burying the dead, it should be paired with praying for the soul's eternal salvation now that it's been separated from the body, especially if you're Catholic and believe in purgatory. Don't just assume they're already in heaven and don't need any help, though it is very possible. Pray for them and offer masses that their temporal punishments in purgatory may be quickened. If they're already in heaven, these prayers and masses will go towards someone else in purgatory. So burying and praying for the dead is an act that's never wasted. Now do you understand the 7 ways Christians are called to tend to others' bodily needs a little better? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, you'll love the one I made about the spiritual works of mercy, which you can watch by clicking the link on your screen. Also check out this other video about Christianity I've made. Whether you want to hear from me about Christianity or another form of religion and spirituality, my channel's for you because I've got it all. So just go ahead and click subscribe.